Hey guys, welcome back to Southern Gal True Crime. I hope everybody is having a good Labor Day weekend and being safe out there and having fun. Um, I chose not to do anything today. It's hot out here once again down here in the South, and I just decided to stay in and stay cool and relax a little bit and try to get some videos recorded for you guys this coming week. And so it is Monday, so we will be having our Missing Persons Monday. And these cases that I found in my researching have a little bit. There's a lot to unpack in these cases. As you saw from the thumbnail, um, all these cases are suspected, presumed homicides, but the bodies of the victims or the remains of victims have not yet been found. So hopefully, I'm going to do this video, give you the information, and hopefully it will maybe jog somebody's memory, and try to maybe bring in some tips or some leads, or at the very least, or the very most, I say it'll help keep the victims' names out there so they're not forgotten. And that's the whole point of my channel, is to bring you these lower profile. To me, all missing persons and cold cases are big cases, but on this channel I usually feature the lesser known cases that don't get the big, the media attention, that are on the television, 24/7 in the news. I try to bring you these smaller cases that you may not have heard of, because all victims, no matter how big or small the case, they deserve to have their story put out there so that they're never forgotten. So we will get started in just a minute on these cases. But first, I always start my videos with a current missing person. This information that I usually bring or usually use comes from neverforgottenar.org, which is the Arkansas Missing Persons Database. Let me get this full screen so I can read what I'm doing. Okay. Today's missing person is Vilma Carrillo. She is just 15 years old. She is a white female, 4'8", 130 pounds, with black hair and black eyes. She went missing from Little Rock, Arkansas on August 10th, 2023. So it hasn't been that long ago. A young girl. I always hate to see anybody missing, but especially young people, teenagers, children. It's very important to me to get this information out to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. So if you have any information about Vilma or her disappearance, you can contact the Little Rock Police Department at 501-371-4605. And I will, as always, put the link to this information in the description box. So I encourage you, please share it. The more people that see it, the better, and try to help bring this young lady home. All right, with that very important information taken care of, we will move to our cases. And as you can see, it's Missing Person Monday, and these have a theme. These are suspected homicides. In all these cases, there is information that leads authorities to believe that these victims, unfortunately, are deceased. Most of them, they have suspects or persons of interest in these cases that they believe allegedly may have taken the lives of these victims. But in all these cases, the victims' remains have not yet been located. So like I said in the beginning, maybe sharing these stories will help jog somebody's memory or help bring some interest in these cases, and try to help find the remains and try to bring these families closure. All right, let me once again take it full screen so I can read what I'm doing. All right, the first missing person we have is Joshua, and I believe all these cases are from Arkansas, as usual. I'm from Arkansas, so I tend to feature a lot of cases from Arkansas to try to help our missing. But I do other cases from other states, usually in the southern part of the United States. But anyway, to Joshua Leon Middleton. Joshua went missing on January 21st of 2005 from Mount Judah, Arkansas. He is classified as endangered missing. He is a white male. At the time that he went missing, he was 20 years old. And if he were alive today, he will be 39. At the time of his disappearance, he was 5'9", 165 pounds. He was last seen a white sweatshirt with the words Mount Judah Eagles, which would be their local mascot for the school. It was written in blue letters on the upper front. He was wearing blue jeans and camouflage print boots, and he was carrying a brown fold-up wallet. He had brown hair, green eyes, and his nickname was Josh. Josh was last seen at approximately 9 a.m. on January 21st, 2005. He was riding with a male individual in a red Ford truck on Dry Creek Road just south of Mount Judah, Arkansas. It is unknown whether this male that he was riding in the red Ford truck, I don't think, as far as I could read, because I tried to do research, look at a lot of different articles if the information is out there to see, to try to find more details, but I was unable to find who this individual was, or if authorities think that the individual in the truck had played any part in his disappearance. Now, in this case, there are a lot of individuals that, in my opinion, and I'm sure in the authorities' opinion, are definitely, at the very least, persons of interest and suspects. So we're going to look at Ricky A. Freeman. Now, we're going to look at Ricky A. Freeman because on the same day that Josh vanished, an individual named Charles Daniel House was found shot in his vehicle between Mount Judah and Hasty, Arkansas. Ricky A. Freeman has been charged with this crime, and he is awaiting trial. Mr. Freeman was also convicted of manslaughter, and it just says other charges. And I believe these charges were for theft of some kind, theft of vehicles. It'll get into, there's more information about Ricky Freeman and two other individuals. So he was convicted of manslaughter and other charges in the death of Shannon Middleton, who was a relative of Josh's. So just keep that in mind. And he was sentenced to 24 years in prison. Now, the killing of Shannon was in 2005 in December, and authorities do believe that Charles Daniel House's homicide and Joshua's disappearances are linked, because they say the two men were friends and that Josh may have been a witness to the homicide of Mr. House. Let's keep that in mind. I said there's a lot to unpack in some of these cases, and a lot of links, either links or coincidences. In my opinion, they're linked together somehow, some way. I don't know. We don't know, but I have a feeling that they're all linked. So, at some point after, authorities in Newton County searched and evacuated the property of David and Ricky Middleton. Now, these are two more characters in this scenario. They did this because they were searching for clues in the disappearance of Josh, who is our main missing person that we are talking about. The search warrant was executed on the Middleton property, which is near Mount Judah. And the sheriff, Keith Slape, says that authorities are also looking for stolen property that they believe to be hidden on the property. And I believe the stolen property that they were talking about is, like I said, stolen vehicles. I think they found a long skid. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe some kind of trailer or something they use to move heavy equipment. I think they found stolen license plates, and I believe I read in an article, I don't know if I included it here, that they did find a car that had been buried. So, of course, they're similarly already have dug up that to just in the case that Josh, possibly could be unfortunately buried there, or his remains may be there. And then authorities also searched a second property owned by these Middleton brothers, and this was all in March of 2010. And how this is connected is that Josh, our missing person, is David Middleton's stepson. So just keep that in mind. Like I said, this is one of those lots of twists and turns in this case, and just either a bunch of coincidences, or in my opinion, it's connected. All of it is connected somehow. Because when I first read the information about why they were searching the property, I'm like, well, why are they searching this property that belongs to these Middleton brothers? Although we'll find out in a minute that these Middleton brothers, in my opinion, are not good, not nice people in the first place. But then I came across the information that Josh is David Middleton's stepson, so that connected them. Anyway, I will quit babbling and we will move on. All right, so we will discuss the Middleton brothers. I forgot what year this was. I don't know if it said, but anyway. So Ricky Middleton, who is the brother of David Middleton, who is pictured there on the left, was arrested and charged with conspiracy to kidnap and conspiracy to escape. The reason he was arrested for this was because his brother David was arrested on federal drug charges, and while he was in jail on these drug charges, they were monitoring calls between Ricky and David, who Ricky was the brother, David's the one in the jail. And the Sheriff Slape says that jail employees have been monitoring calls from David to Ricky when they discovered a plot to kidnap Sheriff Slape's young son. And they were also making a plan to break David Middleton out of jail. So I told you, these Middleton brothers are, in my opinion, not law-abiding good individuals. They're plotting to kidnap a sheriff's son and to break out of jail. So just keep that in mind once again as we go through this case. So David Middleton had pleaded guilty to the federal drug charges. And then Ricky, his brother, was also arrested on a bond revocation after a bench warrant was issued for his arrest for theft by receiving and altering vehicle identification related to this search. So that was the search that they did on the two properties. They found lots of stolen stuff, stolen vehicles, stolen cars, stolen car parts, changing license plates and things of that nature. So that's why the Middleton brothers were subsequently arrested. And I'm going on the assumption, and just my opinion, that they may have either played a part in Josh's disappearance or helped cover it up, or possibly Once again, this is just my opinion. Possibly help hide the body. All right. So Josh may have traveled to Missouri or Texas after his disappearance, but in November of 2007, authorities announced that he was likely the victim of a drug-related homicide. Investigators believe that his life was taken and his body hidden somewhere in Newton County, Arkansas, which I believe the property, the Middleton Brothers property that they searched, is in Newton County, Arkansas. And of course, his case remains unsolved. So let's try to unpack and try to do a little deduction and see what we think, what happened to Josh and who may have been involved. And I would love to, these are just my opinions, but I would love to hear what you guys think. So please do leave comments in the description box if you have any ideas, or if you think any of these people I've mentioned may have had any involvement in Josh's disappearance and probable death. Just always, when you make your comments, all I ask is you respect the victims' families, and each other. So we have Ricky Freeman, who was the one that was convicted of the death of Charles Daniel House, who was a friend of Josh, our missing person we were discussing. And he was also, Ricky Freeman was also either convicted of or charged with manslaughter in the death of Shannon Middleton, who was somehow kin to Josh Middleton. So we have him. We have the two Middleton brothers, Ricky and David, who had the plot to, David was in jail. They monitored the calls. They had the plot to, they were going to kidnap the sheriff's son and break David out of jail. The property that was searched in regards to Josh's disappearance belonged to the Middleton brothers. I think it was two properties they searched. To me, in my opinion, all of this has to be connected. And they did say that it was believed, alleged, that Ricky Freeman, who admitted to or was charged with taking the life of, I got to keep all these names are the same, of Shannon Middleton, who was kin to Josh Middleton. They believe that the working theory is that Josh was a witness to this homicide, and so therefore he was taken out because he witnessed the homicide of his relative. Now, where do I think that the two Middleton brothers come in? Either they were in on the killing of Shannon and Josh, possibility, or he became aware of it after the fact, and for some reason or another, even though Josh was David's stepson, he either he agreed that the Mr. Freeman could hide Josh's body on their property, or unknowingly Mr. Freeman took Josh's body, allegedly, possibly, to the Middleton's property to hide it or dispose of it. Because just from that picture that I showed you, it would be a good place to hide a body. From what I could see, you had all kinds of old cars, old car parts. It looked like a remote dirt area. It'd be very easy to dig a hole and put a body in. And it goes back to in one article I read that they did find a car that had been buried. So possibly Josh's remains could be in there. Who knows? We don't know. So I'm hoping that, and I don't know, I haven't heard or seen any updated information about this case. And I think the last was 2010, when they were doing the searches on the property. So that's been 13 years ago. I will do my best to, when I get some time, to try to do some more research on this case and see if I can find out if anything was ever found on the property. Right. So like I said, just let me know in the comments your thoughts and opinions on this case. And if you do have any information about Josh, his whereabouts, his disappearance, his possible death, you can contact the Newton County Sheriff's Office at 870-446-5124. All right, we will move on to our next case. Now, this is the case of Cynthia Mabry, and I actually had a request here a couple months ago to do a video about Cynthia. Somebody had left a comment, a loyal viewer, and I appreciate everybody who watches my videos on my little channel. I said I'm a newer channel, smaller channel, don't feature a lot of the big cases. So if this is your first time here, I forgot to mention this at the first. If this is your first time here, please do consider subscribing. Check the notification bell to all, so you won't miss any new videos I upload. I try to upload 2 to 3 times a week, and when I do upload, it's usually on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. Mondays I have my missing person Monday. Friday I try to get in my cold case of the week. Wednesday, sometimes I don't always do a video on Wednesday, but Wednesdays are usually reserved for the bigger cases. If there's any new information that comes out on these high profile cases in the news, I will try to do a short condensed video to bring you some of the new information. But anyway, we'll get to all that at the end. But as I was saying, this Cynthia Mabry, I want to say Mayberry, Cynthia Mabry case. Somebody who'd watched one of my other videos did mention this name, and to see, if I could do a little video. So I did look it up, and this is actually a very, very, lots to unpack in this one too, because it's actually not just Cynthia, but 3 other girls who disappeared. Same time, same place as Mabry, and we will get into this I don't want to call him a gentleman because he's definitely not a gentleman. But we'll just start out right now with Cynthia's information. Cynthia went missing on December 2nd, 1976. So this is a very, very cold case. She went missing from Russellville, Arkansas. She was classified as endangered missing. She was a white female. She was 13 years old at the time that she went missing. She was 5 foot, 95 pounds. Her last known clothing was blue jeans and a beige 3/4 length hooded coat with fur trim. She had brown hair, brown eyes, and her nickname was Cindy. So Cynthia was last seen in Russellville, Arkansas at about 5:30 in the afternoon on December 2nd, 1976. She disappeared from her home in the Fairview Estates neighborhood. And you can see Russellville is kind of up in the northwestern, north central part of Arkansas. You can see where that green star is. For anybody that's not from Arkansas, is not familiar with Arkansas. And after that, she was never seen again. Now, on that same day, so this is kind of like a three for one, 3 victims in one case. That same day, 2 other girls vanished from the residences in the same neighborhood that Cynthia disappeared from. They were Teresa Williams, 13, and Crystal Danita Parton, who was 14. Now, at the time, authorities assumed that these girls were all runaways, which is the case. A lot of these cases, and a lot of people want to blame the authorities when these teenage girls run away or when they go missing. They're saying, "Oh, they're just a runaway. They'll be back," and et cetera, et cetera. And I can understand that. Who I mean, police departments get probably hundreds and hundreds of calls every day from frantic parents. Oh my, I haven't seen my child in an hour or 2 hours, and it's not like them to run away, and that's perfectly understandable. If I had a child, a teenager, or any age child, if I didn't see them for an hour or so, unless I knew exactly where they were, I would be worried. But it's not uncommon for teenagers to get mad at mom or dad for some reason, or I'm running away, and they take off, and they're a lot of times, thankfully, they're just down the street at a friend's or somewhere close, and they eventually end up coming home. But you do have the occasions where they truly are missing. And then eventually, of course, the police, the missing persons report is filed, and usually, in the majority of the cases, the children are found, or the teenagers are found safe. But we all know that is not the case. That's not always the case. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. So like I said, authorities assume that the girls were all runaways, but none of them ever returned home. Teresa, now 10 years later, so around 1986, Teresa and Crystal's remains were found. They were found on a dead-end road near Brock Cemetery in northern Pope County, Arkansas. And they had been stabbed in the neck. So it was most definitely ruled homicide. So we will get to Mr. James B. Grinder. So in October of 1998, so once again about 10 years later, a woodcutter named James B. Grinder was charged with the crime of Teresa, Crystal, and Cynthia. Now, at the time, he was already serving a prison sentence in Missouri for burglary, and earlier that year, he had been charged with the 1984 assault and taking the life of Julie Helton, who was a 25-year-old lady from Missouri. And we will get into, I have some information on Julie Helton. Excuse me. Need a drink. These allergies around here have got me all stepped up. And okay, so when he was arrested and charged with the crimes regarding Teresa, Crystal, and Cynthia, at that time he admitted that he did know the girls, and he initially said that he had only given them a ride from Russellville to Pottsville, which Russellville and Pottsville aren't, trying to think of where. They're not, as far as I can remember, Russellville and Pottsville are not that far apart from each other. All these little towns in Arkansas, it's maybe a 15 to 20, 30 minute, 15, 20, 30 minute drive from each other. So I said he'd only given them a ride and the day they disappeared, and he said he had given them $20 and left them on the side of the interstate. So in my opinion, why would you leave, which this gentleman, you'll find out later, is a, in my opinion, a psychopath, a serial offender. So it wouldn't be unusual for him to say, hey, here's $20 and, get out of the truck. This is what he said at first, though. His story is going to change. So, of course, his story changed. So he finally admitted that on December 2nd, 1976, he picked up Teresa Williams, who was 13, Crystal Parton, who was 14, and Cynthia Mabry, who was 13, outside of Russellville, Arkansas. And according to him, the three girls voluntarily got into his car or his vehicle after he offered to buy them alcohol. Whether or not this is true, we don't know. We just have to go on his word. So either it was true that he did, that they did get into his car voluntarily, because he was going to buy them alcohol, or he reached out, grabbed them. Although with three girls, it can be done, but with three girls, it might have been a little bit hard to control all of them, and get them into the car. So I could kind of buy the story that about them voluntarily getting into the car with the promise of alcohol, because we've all been teenage girls or teenage boys, and at 13, 14 years old, I would have been I wouldn't have gotten to a car with a stranger, but I would have been, hey, I've got alcohol. If it was somebody I knew, sure, let's go party. But that was back in my younger, wilder days. Don't do that so much anymore. So anyway, back to Mr. Grinder. After purchasing the alcohol in Morrilton, he drove them to Brock Cemetery, where he assaulted Teresa and Danita. He then strangled them, stabbed them in the neck, and then he hid their bodies under some brush off of a nearby dead-end road. So now he has admitted to taking the lives of Teresa and Danita. And so after that, he took Cynthia, who was still alive, into the Ozark National Forest, which you can see in the picture on the left. It's the area outlined in the green. That is the Ozark National Forest. He took her into the forest and SA'd her. He then attempted to bludgeon her with a soda bottle. That didn't work, so she was still alive, so he beat her to death with a tire iron. So, like I said, this Mr. Grinder is not a good, in my opinion, and I'm sure all of you guys' opinions, not a good man. In my opinion, he is a serial offender, a psychopath, and these three girls really didn't have a chance against Mr. Grinder. So at some point, Grinder's then girlfriend said that he came home at about midnight of the day that the girls disappeared, and that he told her about the missing girls, and he asked her to say that he had been with her all night long. The old I was home with my wife, girlfriend alibi. And as an incentive, he apparently gave her $200. So apparently, in his opinion, the going rate for keeping quiet about 3 homicides of young girls was $200. So then about a week after the murders, I said murders, I'm not supposed to say that. YouTube didn't like that word. A week after the crimes, Mr. Grinder returned to the cemetery to cover Crystal and Danita's remains with more brush to try to hide them in hopes that they would not be found. And like I said, Cynthia's remains have not been found, and they are assumed to be hidden somewhere up in the Ozark National Forest, which is a vast, large area, wooded area. So unfortunately, it would be very, very hard, and I'm sure that there have been numerous searches done in that area. But we all know that in that kind of environment, heavily wooded area, remains are very, very hard to find. Most of the time when they're found, they are found by joggers, hunters, hikers who just happened to stumble upon them and find them, and thank God for that some remains are found just by accident. Okay, so we're going to go back to Julian Helton, who was another victim that Mr. Grinder admitted to or was charged with the death of. On the early morning of January 8th, I believe that's 1984. The StreamYard logo is in my way. I can't always see. The car of Julian Hilton, 25, was found by Missouri State Highway Patrol at the Marceline Junction in Macon County, Missouri. Hilton's parents had filed a missing persons report after she failed to come home from a party in New Cambria the night before. Investigators immediately suspected foul play in her death, noting that her car had been sabotaged. In the articles I looked at, it didn't say what they meant by the car was sabotaged, but obviously they found something that didn't look right. A search party was soon assembled, and they searched for her in Macon and Lynn counties. And on January 11th, which is about 3 days after her car was found, in 1994, 2 volunteer searchers and railroad workers found Julianne's fully clothed body in a field near the tracks of the Santa Fe Railroad. And this was 8 miles northwest of where her car had been found. She had been, I think it said, I might have a different case. She had been assaulted, beaten, and stabbed to death. Later determined that it was Mr. Grinder. Excuse me. Her hands were also bound in front with baling twine, and her right hand showed defensive wounds. Her purse and the weapon that was used were missing and have never been found. So it sounds like Julianne tried to put up a fight, but unfortunately was overpowered by Mr. Grinder. But once again, at least her remains were found. And of course, after the autopsy and investigation, they were returned to her parents so she could be laid to rest. So sorry. There must be something in the air down here today that is just aggravating the crap out of my allergies. Anyway, enough of my problems. Okay, so this is interesting. So Mr. Grinder confessed to the crime of Julianne Helton, but there was a problem with his confession. His story changed many times, and it even contradicted himself many times with these stories. And since police had no physical evidence connecting him to the crime, they had to have a confession. So in June of 1999, Sheriff Robert Dawson contacted Dr. Lawrence Farwell, who was a neuropsychiatrist, and he was the inventor of a thing called brain fingerprinting. And this is a scientific technique used to determine information stored in a subject's brain. Now, I had never heard of brain fingerprinting until I was researching in this case and came across this. And I believe I found this on, on Wikipedia. And I do put all the links to all the sources that I use in the description box. So I will put a link to this. And I will also, if I can find it again, I do believe I found it on Wikipedia too. According to Wikipedia, the explanation of how brain fingerprinting works. So I will put a link to that so you can read it if you wish, because I found it very fascinating. So a grinder agreed to take this test. So Dr. Falwell went to Macon County. He set up his equipment in the prison. Grinder sat in front of and you can see the picture here on the left. He sat in front of a computer screen with this device attached to his head, strapped to his head. Dr. Farwell asked him questions about the crime, and according to this test, Grinder's brain waves revealed that he knew detailed information about the crime that only the perpetrator would know. So, and my question was, is this admissible in court? Because this to me seems like a kind of maybe a more advanced variation of a lie detector test, because we know in lie detector tests they hook you up to the stuff, and the lie detector test supposedly how they can determine if you're lying or telling them the truth is by how your body reacts, I guess, such as heart rate, blood pressure, that they can supposedly tell if you're lying or telling the truth. Now, we all know that lie detector tests are not admissible in court because they are not 100% reliable. And as another one of my favorite creators here on YouTube, and I will give his name, if you've ever watched True Crime Web, that's the channel's name. Mr. Steve, he is retired law enforcement. He did everything from road patrol, SWAT. He moved up to, he became a state certified crime scene tech. He knows his stuff. So, and I'll put a link to his channel in the description box. But he's just a very, very intelligent, down to earth, very nice. And Mrs. Steve, his wife, who's his trusty sidekick. He says when it comes to lie detectors, they can be used as a tool to help further an investigation or kind of give you an idea of what direction to go. But this one, I'll never forget, just the other day, he said that a lie detector cannot tell the difference between a lie and a broken heart. So I just thought that was just brilliant. Your body may be reacting in a different way, but is it because you're lying, or is it because you have a broken heart, or you're feeling grief or anger, or things of that nature? But anyway, I just thought that was a very, very true, very intelligent, and I'd never thought about it that way before. So anyway, back to the case at hand. So like I said, I don't know if this brain fingerprinting would be admissible in court, but as it turns out, they didn't need it because 6 days after this test, Mr. Grinder pleaded guilty to Julianne Helton's homicide, and he was sentenced to life in prison. So there you go. They did not need, if it was even admissible, they did not really need the results of the test, but it did give them supposedly reason to believe that he was the perpetrator of these crimes, and they moved forward. So after this test, and after he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison, he was extradited back to Arkansas to stand trial for the killings of Crystal, Danita, and Cynthia. So he was charged. Now, I found this interesting. I did not know this. He was charged with only a single count of capital M, because at the time in Arkansas, which was 1976, capital M was defined as the premeditated killing of 2 or more people. So in this case, he allegedly killed 3 people, Crystal, Danita, and Cynthia. So that would fall under, he would only be charged with a single count of capital. But 1 count is better than none. So he pleaded guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Now, he later asked for his sentence to be reduced, claiming that he was forced to confess to his crimes and other unnamed individuals had been involved in these crimes. But his petition for clemency was denied. Thank God. Now, I don't know. I couldn't find in anything I read if he ever named. Well, it said he's unnamed individuals. So I'm assuming that, in my opinion, there were no other individuals in this case, and it was all Mr. Grinder who committed these crimes. Unfortunately, Cynthia's body has never been located. Most likely, it is somewhere in the Ozark National Forest, and maybe someday, by the grace of God, it will be found. But and in 2010, Mr. Grinder did die in prison from natural causes. So if you have any information about, now we know that Cynthia was killed and who did it, but Cynthia's family, it would be a closure or a semi-closure if Cynthia's family were able, if her body were to be able to be located and brought home so she could be laid to rest. So if you do have any information about Cynthia or this case, you can contact the Russellville Police Department at 479-968-3232. All right. Ooh, we're already at 47 minutes. Let's see here. Next case we have, and this is another scary case. We have Frida Louise Franks. Frida went missing on August 17th of 2001 from Beaver Lake, Arkansas, which is in the Beaver Lake is up in the very northern corner of Arkansas, very, very close to the Missouri line. She is classified as endangered missing. She is biracial, white, and Native American. When she went missing, at the time she went missing, she was 44 years old. If she were still alive today, she would be 66 years old. At the time of her disappearance, she was 5'6", 120 pounds. Last known clothing was a t-shirt, jeans, sneakers, and a watch. Now there's a 34-foot motorhome, which is associated with this case, and we will get to that. They say she is biracial, Caucasian, Native American, brown hair, brown eyes. Her hair was naturally curly, and some agencies may spell her first name Frida, which is Freda, which is without the I, Fredi. And in 2001, Frida resided in Neosho, Missouri, with her 42-year-old friend, Mark Terrell Walsh, excuse me. And we will get to Mr. Walsh because, once again, he, in my opinion, is a horrible individual. And they were also traveling with an 11-year-old female child on October 17, 2001. Now, this information, which I believe came from the Charlie Project, just said an 11-year-old female child, but I did research this case a little more, and I believe if this is the same child, that this 11-year-old child was Frida's daughter. And I use various sources, some of them are official, like police or court documents. So I'm going on the assumption that this 11-year-old female was Frida's daughter. The group was traveling in a 34-foot motorhome. They stayed in a campground near Table Rock Lake, and I don't know if that Table Rock is on this. Oh yeah, Table Rock Lake. You can see up just across the in the very northwest Arkansas. The red dot up there says Table Rock Lake. They stayed in a campground near Table Rock Lake. It says in Arkansas, but it's right on the border. Shortly after they embarked on the trip. Now, after that, authorities believe that the group drove to Beaver Lake area in northwest Arkansas, which is, I showed you up in the very northwest corner. You see the red dot, and then below it says Beaver Lake. Um, after they left Table Rock Lake, is believed they went to Beaver Lake, and after that, Frida was never heard from again. So we're assuming, somewhere between Table Rock Lake and after they arrived at Beaver Lake, there was no sightings or anything of Frida. So moving to Mr. Walsh. So on September 9th of 2001, Mr. Walsh and this child, which I'm going on the assumption just from what I've read, is Frida's daughter. They arrived near Green Forest on September 9th, 2001. And Franks was not with them. Frida was not with them. And at some point, the 11-year-old child, told investigators that she believed that she had seen a decomposing body inside one of the cabins that she and Mr. Walsh had visited, but she was unable to recall the location of the building. So obviously, big red flag, big clue. After Beaver Lake, Frida was never seen again. Then Mr. Walsh and the child on September 9th arrived in rural Arkansas near Green Forest, which I'm not sure where rural Arkansas and Green Forest is. But let's see if we can. Trying to get the date of so this was on August 17th. The last time that Frida was seen was on August 17th. And so on September 9th is when Mr. Walsh and the child, so a little less than a month later, Mr. Walsh and the 11-year-old child showed up in rural Arkansas. And then that's when the girl said that she believed that she saw the decomposing body in the cabin, but she couldn't recall where it was. So in the summer of 2001, this is a little bit of backstory about Frida and her daughter. In the summer of 2001, the victim, which was the child, and her mother, Frida, were living in their car, and that sometimes they stayed with Mr. Walsh in his motorhome. Now, this claims that sometime during this time, Frida returned to the motorhome, and she witnessed Walsh attacking her daughter. Let's just put it that way, because I'm not sure if I can use the M word, but you can read there on the screen. She witnessed Walsh attacking her daughter. And so the victim, which is the daughter, told authorities that after that night, she never saw her mother again. Mr. Walsh then proceeded to tell people that he was the victim's father, which is the girl, and they continued to travel for 8 months. In April of 2022, while staying at a Branson campground, a female friend of Walsh took the victim, the little girl, to a nearby Walmart supercenter where the girl told the manager what was happening, that she had been kidnapped, and the Stone County Sheriff's Department was called. So after this, Mark Walsh was arrested, and the victim, the little girl, which we're presuming is Frida's daughter, was placed in the custody of her biological father. So thank God they got this child away from Mark Walsh. Don't even want to think about what horrors this child went through with him. And then she possibly, just my opinion, could have witnessed the demise of her mother. So I'm sure this poor child was traumatized, and I hope she's safe and sound now and getting the help that she needs. Um, so after that, Mr. Walsh was convicted of 2 counts of first degree. You can read it there, assault on the child, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Thank God. This monster is off the street, and hopefully, in my opinion, he will never see the light of day again. Because I have stated before, I'm not afraid to say it, there is a special place in hell for those kind of people. Just my opinion. He is currently incarcerated in a Missouri prison, and obviously foul play is suspected in Frida's case due to the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. And Arkansas authorities are handling the investigation. So if you have any information about Frida, her disappearance, her possible death, you can call the Stone County Sheriff's Office at 417-357-6117. All right. Woo, this is going to be a long video today. Stick with me. But like I said, there's a lot to these cases. Next we have Darla Melissa Harper. Sorry. Darla went missing on March 4th of 1986 from Little Rock, Arkansas. She is classified as endangered missing. She is a white female. She was 25 years old at the time she went missing, and if she were alive today, she would be 63. At the time she went missing, she was 5'3" to 5'5", 115 pounds, so she was a little gal. Last known clothing description: a pullover shirt, jeans, a horseshoe-shaped diamond ring, a diamond cluster ring, and a teardrop-shaped diamond pendant. Now, why do you ask, why do you give descriptions of a person who is presumed dead, most likely killed? But, if anybody were to see this, just clothing and jewelry descriptions might jog somebody's memory. Or if authorities happen to find the clothing or any of the jewelry, and they can show it to a family member and say, does this belong to your loved one? They can say, yes, it does, or no, it doesn't. So that's why descriptions of clothing and jewelry are important. Darla had light brown hair, brown eyes. She had a burn scar on her left elbow, approximately 1.5 inches long. And she also had a small scar on her right cheek. Darla was last seen at her apartment in Grand Ridge, Arkansas, which I'm assuming Grand Ridge, I'm not familiar with it, is kind of like a little suburb of Little Rock, or between Little Rock and Jacksonville. And you see the green star there is Little Rock, and the Jacksonville area, it's all right there together. Off Jacksonville Caddo Road on March 4th, 1986. A neighbor had went to visit her that day, and the neighbor left at approximately 9:30 that evening. The same neighbor heard noises coming from Darla's residence between 11 and 11:30 later that evening. But she said that she didn't investigate the sounds because they did not sound very loud or threatening. Now, we all have neighbors. Well, I live out in the country, so I only have one neighbor who is my uncle, who is very quiet. But if you live in a city, especially a city like Little Rock, Jacksonville, very busy, bustling, you're going to hear loud noises and such. But apparently the sounds that she heard did not sound threatening or violent. So when Darla did not arrive at work the following morning as scheduled, a coworker checked her apartment. Now this is where it gets down to the nitty-gritty. The coworker checked her apartment, and she found Darla's 2-year-old daughter was alone in the apartment, and there was blood on the apartment's front door. So that right there, obviously, red flag, clue. And there was no sign of Darla, and she has never been heard from again. So my heart breaks for this 2-year-old daughter of Darla's. At 2 years old, a lot of people think that 2-year-olds don't recall a lot of stuff, but 2-year-olds, kids, they can recall and comprehend a lot more stuff than we give them credit for. So it just breaks my heart about, especially some more information I'm fixing to give you, I think, in the next slide about what this child says that she saw. I believe it was the next day, maybe. The next day or somewhere around there, Darla's car was found abandoned in a commuter parking lot near Crystal Hill Road, which was 9 miles away from Darla. I cannot talk today. I'm so sorry. Darla's home. Oh, and it was da, 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 yeah, 9 miles away. The day after her disappearance, her car was found. And you see that Crystal Hill there, that mark, it's all in the same area. Now in the car there was an unidentified set of fingerprints inside the vehicle, and there was a small amount of blood found inside the car. Don't know if the blood belonged to Darla. I'm going to assume that it belonged to Darla. Unidentified prints. Didn't ever find anything in any articles about if they had found who, which I'm sure if they had found who the unidentified set of fingerprints belonged to, they would have been questioned at the very least. So this is the heart-wrenching, I'm going to get choked up, the heart-wrenching statement made by Darla's 2-year-old daughter. After Darla disappeared, her daughter made statements that 3 men came in funny hats, and that she saw Mommy in a bag, and that Mommy's feet were broken. To me, this is definitely a clue, but it tears my heart up that this 2-year-old child could have seen something so horrible happen to her mother. And now, whether or not the child really saw this or it was just something in her mind, like I said, you got to give kids more credit than we do about what they see. Because I know that in, law enforcement and authorities, that they don't put a lot of credence into what younger children say. But we have to start at least consider, following up on it, which I'm sure they did. Because this was very, very specific. 3 men in funny hats. Mommy in a bag. Mommy's feet were broken. So to me, that's detail, Anyway. When I read that, I cringe. All right, so 5 months after Darla disappeared, a neighbor came forward and claimed to have witnessed Darla being abducted from her home. Now, this statement has not been verified. But to me, in my opinion, and I'm not saying this is what happened, this is just a theory. If you have a neighbor that says, which is 5 months later, and I don't know why this neighbor waited that's the only reservation I have, is why did the neighbor wait 5 months before she or he came forward with this information? But be that as it may. So you have the neighbor that came forward and claimed to have witnessed Harper being abducted from her home. You have Darla's 2-year-old child saying 3 men came in with funny hats. They found, Mommy was in the bag, her feet were broken, and she disappeared. Could be possibly tied together as an abduction. That would be my theory. Like I said, this is just my theory, my opinions. I don't know for sure. I would love to know what you think, so please do leave a comment. This could be one possible scenario of Darla's disappearance. So after Darla disappeared, there was apparently a court hearing regarding custody of the couple's daughter. Barry Harper was either Darla's husband or ex-husband. Was her ex-husband. So during this court appearance, accusations about Darla having been the question was brought up whether or not her ex-husband had taken Darla's life. So when confronted about these claims that Darla was buried on his property, Barry Harper challenged investigators to look for themselves. So they did. In 1990, investigators searched the backyard of Darla's ex-husband's house, Barry, where Harper had lived prior to the divorce. And now this was done after Barry's then wife, so apparently after Darla disappeared, he remarried. His then wife told authorities that Darla was buried in the backyard. The search did uncover bone fragments, but authorities were unable to determine whether they were human. Now, this was back in 1990. Excuse me. I have to get comfortable. This was back in 1990. I'm sure that forensic investigations were starting to advance. I was never able to find whether or not they eventually did determine whether or not they were or were not human, or if they could have been animal. I'll try to do some more research on these individual cases and try to find some more information. So nothing came of the search. And apparently Mr. Barry Harper was, I don't know if he was cleared, but I don't know if he remained a person of interest in the case, etc. Police say that Darla's loved ones suspect foul play in her disappearance, obviously. Excuse me. She is described as a devoted mother who would not have willingly abandoned her children. There is very little evidence available in her case, and it remains unsolved, obviously. So we have at least two scenarios I can come up with. Just my opinion. These are just theories. Could her husband have had something to do with her disappearance? Apparently, they're going through a divorce, and now I don't know if the custody hearing has started before Darla's disappearance or after she disappeared. So we have that possibility, and then I go back to the possibility of the daughter saying that the men in the funny hats came in and took mommy. The neighbor 5 months later, granted, did report that she had seen Darla abducted from her house. So that kind of, with the daughter statements and the witness statements, neighbor statements, that another possibility that she was just kidnapped, stranger abduction, or possibly somebody that she might have known. And in another article I read, that the neighbor who claimed that she reported seeing Darla abducted did mention the fact that there had been some kind of workers. I think she just said workers. It could have been construction workers. It could have been utility workers had been in that area. So I think maybe she was trying to insinuate that maybe some of these workers had came in and abducted Darla. Nothing was ever proven, or I'm sure maybe they looked into it to see if any workers were in the area. I'm sure they covered all their bases. So that's just, let's say that's just the possibilities. But other than that, that's really all the evidence they have in the case. So if you have any information about Darla, her disappearance, her possible death, you can contact the Pulaski County Sheriff's Office at 340-6601. All right. Oh, I got another one here. Ooh, this is going to be a long video. But like I said, these are very, very involved stories. Next, and I think this might be the last one. So please bear with me. Hang in there with me. Is Jared Devlin Green. I'm sorry, I keep drinking on camera, but my voice is going on me. All right, Jared Devlin Green. Jared went missing on September 30th, 1994 from Searcy, Arkansas. He is classified as endangered missing. He was a white male. He was 20 years old at the time of his disappearance, and if he were alive today, he would be 49. He was 6 foot, 140 to 150 pounds. Last known description of clothing was a pale green short sleeve sweater over a light colored shirt, baggy tan khaki pants, a white socks, and Birkenstock or Nike sandals. He had brown hair, blue eyes. He had a scar on his left hand between his index and middle fingers, a tattoo on his abdomen, and a tattoo of the Tasmanian Devil cartoon character with the initials SH on his right shoulder blade. And he says he also had a bump on his nose from a prior fracture. So apparently he had got punched in the nose maybe before, I don't know, or fell. On September 30th of 1994, Jared had received a phone call at his residence in Searcy. During this phone call, he agreed to meet a friend named Brandon L. Wheeler. Keep that in mind. Oh, hold on. I forgot to plug up my charger. 1 second. Technical difficulties, you know me. Okay. Sorry, I forgot to plug my phone into the charger whenever I do these videos, it sucks a lot of my battery power out. Okay. Back to Jared. So he received this phone call. He agreed to meet a friend, Brandon L. Wheeler, keep this name in mind, at the Searcy County Country Club. And after that, he left his house. Now, also keep this in mind. Jared had previously stated that he owed money to this Brandon Wheeler for drugs and that he had no intention of paying the debt because he said that this Brandon Wheeler had previously stolen money from him. So I'm assuming maybe he's saying, okay, this Brandon Wheeler stole money from me. I'll allegedly owe him money for drugs. So he stole from me. I owe him money. We're going to call it even. I'm just going on that assumption. So after this phone call and he left to meet this Brandon, he was never heard from again. So that is the basics on his disappearance. On October 3rd, 3 days after he was last seen, Jared's vehicle was discovered abandoned in the Walmart parking lot in Searcy. Also, keep this in mind. Keep this information in mind. The car's windows were open and the keys were located on the floor underneath the driver's seat. There was no sign of Jared at the scene, and he was reported missing on October 5th, 2 days later. So keep in your mental sticky notes, keep this in mind. He got a call from Brandon Wheeler. He allegedly owed money for drugs to Brandon. He had stated that he was not going to give Brandon the money. 2 days later, he's never heard from again. 2 days later, his car was found in the a Walmart parking lot in Searcy. Keep all this in mind. So we will go to witness statements. In September of 1995, a witness named Charles Langley told police that sometime in late 1984, Wheeler who was Brandon Wheeler, I got to try to keep all these people straight. Brandon Wheeler was the person that allegedly called Jared, and Jared supposedly owed him drug money. Jared said he wasn't going to pay him the money, so on and so forth. So the witness, Charles Langley, said that Wheeler and Wheeler's roommate, Jason Webb, asked him if they wanted to help, quote, get rid of someone in exchange for $1,000. They explained that they wanted to have Jared taken out because he owed them $7,500. So that goes back to maybe this $7,500 is what Jared allegedly owed Brandon Wheeler for the drugs. Langley stated that he declined to participate in these activities, and that sometime later that year in December, Wheeler and Webb went to Mr. Langley's house again and said that Green Jared was, quote, no longer a problem, and that he had been, quote, taken out of the picture after they, quote, grabbed him at a Walmart store. So I told you, remember, his car was found in the Walmart parking lot in Searcy. Things are starting, in my opinion, things are tying together. Langley, the witness, stated that Jason Webb and Brandon Wheeler were talking about how to dispose of Jared's body, but Langley told them that he wanted nothing to do with it. Smart move on his part, because in my opinion, if he would have helped get rid of Jared's body, he most likely would have disappeared too and never be seen again because he was a witness. That's just my opinion. I don't know. So authorities do believe that Jason Webb and Brandon Wheeler took the life of Jared, but they didn't have the evidence to file charges at the time. So now we're going to go back to Mr. Langley, the witness who gave the statement. In 2000, Mr. Langley was re-interviewed and he recanted his previous statement. He said he did not know Brandon Wheeler and Jason Webb at the time of Green's disappearance, and that what he'd said about the alleged crime was just, quote, stuff that was just being spread around the drug community. He stated that he had made up the story because he was facing a prison sentence and thought that his statement might help him. In other words, if he gave them some information, whether it was true or not, it might help him get a reduced sentence, or we all know how that works. And so once again, in 2016, when police were reinvestigating Jared's case, they spoke to Langley again, and again he recanted his 1995 statement. So, what do we think about Mr. Langley's statement and his recanting of his statement? Now, in my opinion, Mr. Langley's statement does make sense. Once again, I'm trying to make it as short as possible. This is going to end up being an hour and a half video. But anyway, we have the alleged fact that Jared owed Brandon money for drugs. Jared stated that he was not going to pay the money back to Mr. Wheeler because he claimed that Mr. Wheeler had stolen either drugs or money from him, so he was going to call it even. Jared's car 9 days later or 3 days later was found in a Walmart parking lot. He was nowhere to be found. Mr. Langley comes forward with his statement that said that Mr. Wheeler and Mr. Webb had approached him to see if he wanted to participate in a crime, a killing of Mr. Green, because they stated that Mr. Green owed him that Jared owed Wheeler $7,500. In my opinion, that would maybe tie back to the drug money that Jared owed Mr. Wheeler. Mr. Langley then said, or Brandon, or see, Antonio, I'm trying to keep all these names. I'm in a hurry and I'm trying to keep the names straight. Jared's car was later found in a Walmart parking lot. Mr. Langley stated in his statement that Mr. Wheeler and Mr. Webb had grabbed somebody, Mr. Green, from a Walmart parking lot. So to me, his statement does make sense. But I would love to know what you think, if I'm just misinterpreting. But to me, his statement does make sense. And it could be, that he is telling the truth and that he was given this statement to help him get a reduced sentence, or whatever the case may be in his own case. Or it could be that Mr. Langley did possibly, allegedly, this is just my opinion or a theory, did take part in the killing of Jared, and he's just distanced in his statement. We all seen it. We've seen it before. He's distancing himself. He's given facts, but he's distancing himself from it and saying that Mr. Wheeler and Mr. Webb were the ones that actually took care of Jared and he had nothing to do with it, blah, blah, blah. That could also be the case. So anyway, it's either way. I think that is, oh, okay. So that's my opinion of what could have happened. Once again, I'd love to hear yours. Leave me a comment. So officers suspect that Jared's remains were present or are present at a rural property, which was searched on December 13th, 2016, using a certified, and this does come from a police report, using a certified cadaver dog named Gunner. A mission report documenting the search stated that Gunner was brought to the point last seen and allowed to take inventory of the odors in the area prior to being scented, indicating that a dog handler exposed Gunner to Jared's scent before the search proceeded. The report recorded that Gunner showed repeated interest in a spot near an old deer stand, an area that had been described by a confidential informant. Now, this is the first that I've read about a confidential informant, but that's why they're confidential. On December 17th of 2015, which was two years later. No, that has to be wrong. That has to be, I think they got the wrong year, because I think it's supposed to be December 17th, 2013. So basically 2 days after the first search, the officers searched the property again with additional different dogs, who both reacted to the same spot where Gunner, the first dog, had shown an interest. The search extended to a pond on the property, which was drained, but physical evidence of human remains were never found. So apparently, they searched 2 different times with 3 different dogs. So the first time they searched with 1 dog, second time with 2 dogs. And apparently all 3 dogs indicated on the same area. And I'm sure they did other searches and maybe did excavations or ground penetrating radar or any tools they had at their disposal at the time. But as far as I know, as of 2023, Jared's remains have not been found, unfortunately. Okay, so we will move to Mr. Wheeler. Fast forward to May of 2017. Nearly 23 years after Jared disappeared, Mr. Wheeler was charged with capital M and abuse of a corpse in this case. And this is a photo of Mr. Wheeler. Investigators said that they believe that he killed Jared over the drug debt. According to witnesses, Jared was afraid of Mr. Wheeler. And on the night of Jared's disappearance, he had asked a friend to return a .38 Rossi revolver he lent this friend because he needed it for protection from Mr. Wheeler. So it sounds like, I'm not going to say I was right, but it sounds like my theory might have a grain of truth to it. He had the drug debt. He was going to meet Mr. Wheeler. He was afraid of him. He wanted a gun for protection. But unfortunately, the case was dropped in November of 2017 because the prosecution stated that they needed additional evidence and they hoped they could refile the charges at a later date in the future. So, they pretty much allegedly know that Mr. Wheeler took the life of Jared, but they just don't have enough evidence to prove it or to take it to court to be charged. And once again, as I've said before, another creator I watch on here, former law enforcement says it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So hopefully in the near future, as I said, they can find more evidence, hopefully at some point find Jared's remains, and be able to charge Mr. Wheeler with the homicide of Jared and help bring and hopefully be able to find, like I said, find his remains, bring him home to rest, and give his family some closure. So a little bit of background about Jared. He did graduate Searcy High School in 1993. Obviously, foul play suspected in this case. So if you have any information about Jared, his disappearance, his likely death, any information about any of the persons of interest, please do call the Searcy Police Department at 501-268-3531. All right, I think we made it to the end of it. I said this is about the longest video I've done on a Missing Person Monday, but it was well worth it. Like I said, obviously there was a lot of information to unpack in these cases, but it's very, very important to get the information out there. So keep these victims' names and stories out there. Hopefully, find some resolution or just generate interest. Maybe bring in some leads and try to help bring these. Do just a little part here on my baby channel to try to bring some resolution to these cases. Lost my train of thought as usual. Anyway, I hope you I won't say enjoyed this, but I hope you found it interesting, informative. I encourage you, please do comment, like, share. The more comments and likes and shares that these videos get, the more YouTube pushes it out to more people, and the more people that see it, the better. Helps keep the names out there so all these victims are never forgotten. I said before, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. Set that notification bell to all so you won't miss any of my new videos. Until next time, please do take care of yourselves. Please be safe out there. Take care of each other. That is the most important thing we can do in this world, is to take care of our fellow human beings so we can all make it through this life safely. So once again, thank you very much for watching. It's very much appreciated, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.